They said I was too weird for sales and sent me to storage to count swag boxes. I found receipts, dozens of unreported transactions and personal purchases, scanned them, labeled them BCC'd compliance. Friday at lunch, the whole sales team got called upstairs. One came back down and whispered, "What did you do?" I just smiled and went back to counting. I wasn't supposed to end up in sales enablement. I had a background in systems and data tracking, but I was also decent with people. At least, that's what I thought. During the interview process, I tried to come across as organized, calm, detail-focused. I guess what they really wanted was loud, flashy, cool. That wasn't me. But they hired me anyway. Maybe someone needed to check a diversity box. Not racial or gender diversity, just social. From the beginning, I could tell I didn't fit in. I was polite, quiet, and I took my job seriously. I wasn't into the sales team's inside jokes, bar nights, or fantasy football league. I'd ask questions about process and documentation, and they'd look at me like I was speaking another language. I was the only one who read the internal wiki. I once reminded someone they skipped a required compliance training and they laughed and said, "You really are a rule follower, huh?" The whispers started early, a little too intense, kind of robotic, doesn't vibe with the team. My manager, Drew, told me to smile more in meetings. I started writing down everything I did, saving every email just in case. Something told me I'd need proof someday. I wasn't wrong. After about 6 months, Drew pulled me into a meeting with HR. He smiled the whole time while telling me my talents weren't being fully utilized in a sales-facing role. He said I'd be more effective behind the scenes. Then he said something I'll never forget. "You're smart, just not in the way we need up here." The HR woman nodded like that was a reasonable thing to say. The next day, my badge access changed. I was no longer on the 5th floor with the team. I was reassigned to a storage room on 2. No windows. Old linoleum. Shelves stacked with dusty swag boxes and outdated marketing banners. My new job was to do a full physical inventory of all promo materials. No timeline, no reporting structure, just a scanner and a spreadsheet. No one ever came to check on me. That first week was rough. I didn't tell my family what happened. I kept showing up on time, taking my lunch breaks alone, watching the Slack channels stay quiet. I felt invisible. But something shifted after the second week. I got curious. In the far corner of the room, wedged between broken pop-up booths and empty lanyard boxes, there was a stack of old banker boxes with faded labels. Some said Events 2022, some just said Swag, Miscellaneous. One box had a sticky note on top that read, "Old stuff, do not toss." Inside, mixed with old notebooks and dusty polos, were receipts. Dozens. At first I thought they were just old expense logs that never got filed. But then I started looking closer. Some of the receipts were for bulk coffee or Uber rides, normal stuff. But others were strange. High-end steakhouse dinners with no client names. Apple Store purchases. Hotel rooms on weekends in cities we never held events in. A $1,200 charge at a golf club. One receipt was for spa. Another was for a drone. Most had handwritten notes like promo client gift or just initials TK, RM, JS. A few were paper-clipped to old calendars or crumpled reimbursement forms. None of it matched what I remembered from our actual campaigns or events. I started scanning. Quietly. I used a free app on my phone. Every receipt got a file name, date, amount, initials if they were on there. I made a folder on my personal Google Drive. Then I started cross-checking. I still had access to our old shared calendars. I started comparing dates and names. A lot didn't add up. One rep had charged 3 meals to the company on the same night in different cities. One guy got reimbursed for a $900 client dinner while he was on PTO in Tulum. I checked our CRM. There were no deals or client notes tied to most of these events. A few were obviously fake names. One guy charged for client entertainment at a bar that doesn't even exist anymore. I didn't tell anyone. I just kept collecting. Quiet, invisible in the storage room. It took me about 3 weeks to gather enough to be sure. I had 53 separate receipts that looked shady. I grouped them by rep name and date, labeled them, built a simple index in a spreadsheet. On a Thursday night, right before I left, I wrote a short email to our compliance inbox. I didn't use my company account. I sent it from a burner Gmail I made that day. The subject line was, Unreported Sales Expenses, Internal Review Needed. I attached a zip folder with everything. In the BCC line, I added someone from HR I met during onboarding. She had once mentioned she used to work in audit. I figured she'd know what to do. Then I went home, ate dinner, watched TV, slept fine. Friday started normal. I showed up, badged in, went back to my corner in storage. Around noon, I noticed the sales floor Slack channel went quiet. Not just quiet, dead. No memes, no lunch chatter, nothing. Around 12:30, someone from upstairs came down, looked around, and asked if I'd seen Drew. I said no. They left fast. By 1:15, I got curious. I walked to the lobby and looked up through the glass at the 5th floor. Empty desks. One guy was sitting alone, just staring at his screen. Another was on the phone, pacing, whispering. Then Tyler came down. He was a junior rep, maybe 2 years out of school. Always wore too much cologne. He walked past me, did a double take, came back, leaned in, and said, "Hey, what did you do?" I just looked at him. I didn't say anything. I smiled real small and went back to my scanner, because I knew something he didn't. That wasn't the only folder I had. The next week felt like the air shifted. People weren't talking like they used to. The sales floor was tense. Doors were shut more often. The VP of sales, who normally strutted around like a TED Talk with legs, wasn't seen all week. Drew wasn't at Monday's check-in meeting. Someone said he was working from home, but no one sounded confident. I stayed quiet. Down in storage, I kept scanning swag and logging it like nothing happened. But every so often, I'd get a visitor. Not officially, just people looking for a box or checking inventory. Reps who had never spoken to me suddenly remember my name. They lingered, tried small talk, asked if I liked the new role. One asked what I really did down here. He smiled when he said it, but it didn't feel like a joke. I just nodded and kept scanning. By Thursday, IT rolled out a mandatory password reset for all employees. That was the first real sign that something big was happening. Then people started losing access to tools. Some reps got locked out of Salesforce. I only knew because one of them came down looking for a charger and mentioned it in passing. That Friday, HR started holding one-on-ones with everyone on the sales team. The calendar invites just said touch base. People came out of those rooms looking rattled. One guy didn't even go back to his desk. He walked straight out of the building and didn't come back. I still hadn't been contacted. The strange part was how many people suddenly remembered I existed. A few of the support staff who used to ignore me asked if I wanted to come sit upstairs again. One even brought me a coffee. I didn't drink it. I didn't trust it. Then, on Monday morning, my badge didn't work. I froze in front of the scanner, thinking the worst. I had a small panic. Maybe they figured out it was me. Maybe someone traced the email, or maybe I slipped somehow. I stood there too long before a janitor let me in. I rode the elevator up to 2, walked slowly to my storage dungeon. But the door was already open. Inside was a man I didn't recognize. Late 40s, serious suit, not smiling. He had a stack of folders open on the folding table I'd been using as a desk. I almost turned and walked away, but he waved me in. He introduced himself, said he was from internal risk and controls. He didn't ask if I sent the email. He didn't need to. He said we're handling the issue, then asked if I'd be willing to answer a few questions about the receipts I found. I told him yes. I was calm, but my hands were shaking. He asked how I found them, how I organized them, if I still had copies. I said yes to all 3. He asked if I'd spoken to anyone about it. I said no. Then he said something I wasn't expecting. He thanked me. He said the company had been trying to clean up internal spending practices for a while. but they didn't have hard proof. What I gave them was actionable. He said several people were being reviewed for financial misconduct. I nodded, still numb. Then he left. No handshake, just a quiet nod and a file folder under his arm. That afternoon, an email went out company-wide. New expense policy. Effective immediately. All receipts must be uploaded to a new centralized system. No exceptions. Everyone had to retake compliance training. The same reps who called me a snitch behind my back were now pretending none of it happened, but the fallout was only just beginning. By the end of the month, 2 salespeople were quietly let go. No announcement, just gone from the org chart. One of them had been with the company since the beginning. Another had just closed a huge deal, or at least said he did. No one asked questions out loud, but the hallway whispers got louder. Drew was still working from home. His LinkedIn profile suddenly changed to open to opportunities. I should have felt vindicated, but then someone started messing with my stuff. At first, it was small. A few boxes I'd already counted removed. My scanner would be in the wrong place. A report I left half-finished disappeared. I thought maybe I just misplaced things. Then, one morning, I came in and my laptop was gone. No sign of forced entry. Just gone. I reported it to IT and to HR. They said it must have been a mix-up. They gave me a loaner. I didn't argue, but I noticed someone had logged into my cloud folder the day before, one I hadn't touched in a week. I changed all my passwords, set up 2FA. I started bringing a personal flash drive, encrypting everything. I stopped using the Wi-Fi. I knew someone was trying to scare me. It didn't work. Because I wasn't scared. I was angry. I'd been humiliated, hidden, written off. They shoved me in a room and called it a better fit, and when I finally made myself useful, they pretended it wasn't me. And now someone was trying to cover tracks that were already exposed. They didn't realize I kept everything, and I was still watching. About 2 weeks after the laptop went missing, I got an email from legal. It was short, polite. They wanted to schedule a fact-finding discussion with me, not an interrogation, just internal clarity gathering. I stared at it for a while before responding. I booked the meeting for the following Monday. That gave me the weekend to prepare. I went through everything, my receipts folder, backups, screenshots, calendar comparisons. I even printed out a few of the worst ones. I didn't know what they wanted from me, but I had a bad feeling. The meeting was over video, even though we were all in the same building. Legal, a woman from HR, and a guy I'd never met before who didn't introduce himself. They asked about how I found the receipts. I told them the truth, forgotten swag boxes, careless reps, nobody watching. Then they asked me something I didn't expect. Have you discussed this matter outside the company? I said no, and I hadn't. But they didn't ask if I'd considered it. They didn't ask if I still had copies. They were measuring my answers, feeling for weak spots. After the call, I got paranoid. Not scared, just alert. Then, a few days later, my access to the shared drives was cut off. No warning, no explanation. I asked IT. They said it was a permissions update. I asked HR. They claimed it was standard cleanup, but the timing was off. That same week, I got a visit from someone I hadn't seen in months. Drew. He walked into the storage room like he still worked there, even though no one had said his name in weeks. He didn't look like himself, tie gone, bags under his eyes, fake smile glued, unlike he forgot how to wear it. He stood in the doorway and said, "You doing okay down here?" I didn't say anything. He stepped in, looked around like it was the first time he'd ever really seen the room. Then he said something that stuck with me. There's a way we can make this all go away. I didn't respond. He kept talking. Said a few receipts weren't worth burning bridges over. Said there were bigger things at play. He never said the word hush, but that's what it was. A quiet offer to forget, let it fade, move on. I didn't take it. He left with a tight nod. 2 days later, he was officially no longer with the company. That part wasn't a surprise. The surprise came the next Monday, when I got CC'd on an internal report. By accident, It was a draft copy meant for legal and finance. My name was in it, but not as a whistleblower, as a data handling concern. It said there were questions about unauthorized access and whether I stored company financial data on unsecured personal systems. That's when it hit me. They weren't just cleaning house. They were rewriting the story. Someone up top didn't want this traced back to a structural issue. They didn't want headlines. They didn't want to admit they let sales reps commit fraud for years. So instead, they were preparing to turn it around. Make it look like the data came from an unreliable source. Me? It wasn't just about the receipts anymore. It was about control, narrative, liability. I knew then that I couldn't rely on the company to do the right thing. So I made a copy, not just of the receipts, but of everything I had. Emails, Slack messages, timestamp scans, even the spreadsheet showing who signed off on each reimbursement. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I started building a timeline, not just for myself, but for the outside. Not to go viral, not for attention, but because I could feel them circling. HR was setting up meetings I hadn't requested. My new team lead was suddenly copying me on low-priority emails and asking me to summarize them. It felt like they were testing me, waiting for a misstep, something they could write up. They didn't know I had more than receipts. They didn't know I had proof that this went deeper. And they didn't know I wasn't done yet. After that CC'd report, I stopped trusting internal systems completely. I backed up everything again. This time offline, encrypted, stored on a drive I kept in my glove compartment. I also started printing things. Real paper. I didn't want to rely on anything I couldn't physically hold. They tried to isolate me slowly. Small things. My calendar stopped syncing properly. My name disappeared from 2 regular meetings I was supposed to be in. I asked about it once. Got a vague response. Mistake, they said. Admin error. It wasn't. Then someone from facilities came by, said there were plans to repurpose storage. I asked where I was supposed to go. He shrugged, said maybe try hot desking. No one else followed up. So I kept showing up. Sat in the same corner. No chair? I brought one from the loading dock. No Wi-Fi? I worked offline. I made myself a problem that wouldn't disappear. Then came the audit. Not the fake, internal one. A real one. External. I only found out because a junior accountant I used to chat with by the vending machine slipped and mentioned it. She said, quietly, they're doing a sweep. Compliance got spooked. That made sense. The company was big enough to attract attention, but small enough that a few dirty sales reps could fly under the radar for years. If someone outside was looking now, that meant something I did had hidden nerve. Then I got a calendar invite. Legal, HR, my new manager, all in one room. It was scheduled for Friday at 3 p.m. The old trick. Late Friday meetings were where they did the quiet exits. No scene, just a signed paper and an escorted walkout. I knew that. Everyone did. It was how they handled the ones they didn't want around anymore. So I prepared. I printed one full copy of everything, my own report neatly tabbed and labeled. I put it in a black folder. No company logos, no labels, just clean, professional. I didn't tell anyone I was bringing it. I also did one more thing. I uploaded a redacted summary, scrub of names but not details, to a private Dropbox with a timed access link. And I scheduled that link to auto-send to 3 personal contacts. One ex-colleague who now worked in media, one labor attorney I once emailed but never hired, and one reporter from a business blog I followed quietly. The timer was set for 3:30 p.m. The meeting started late. They made me wait in the lobby for 20 minutes. When I was finally called in, the room felt staged. Smiles too wide. Notebooks closed. No one made eye contact. They started with pleasantries. Asked how I'd been adjusting. Asked if I had any lingering concerns. Then they eased into it. We've noticed some patterns in your digital footprint. You've accessed financial records not relevant to your role. There are concerns about how some of this data was stored. I let them talk. I didn't interrupt. I watched them carefully. I could tell they weren't sure what I had. They were fishing. Then they slid a piece of paper across the table. A quiet offer. It wasn't called that, but that's what it was. Severance. A small payout, NDA, non-disparagement clause, immediate resignation. They even threw in a neutral reference. The woman from HR smiled, like it was mercy. I didn't touch the paper. I reached into my bag and slid the black folder across the table instead. No words, just paper. They looked confused. Then they opened it. Pages and pages of printed receipts, emails, Slack messages, reimbursement forms with mismatched dates, my notes with audit cross-references. There were even screenshots of approvals from VP-level staff that didn't match policy. The smiles disappeared. I said one thing, I have more. Then I stood up and left. Didn't wait for their answer. I went back to the storage room, sat down, opened my laptop, and waited. 3:31 p.m. The Dropbox link sent. 3 different inboxes lit up. They thought they were cornering me. They forgot one thing. I watched everything. And I don't forget. I didn't go on Monday. I didn't call out either. I just stayed home and waited. By noon, my personal email had 4 new messages. 2 from unknown numbers, 1 from the labor attorney I never hired, and 1 from a burner account. The reporter. She wanted a phone call. Said the documents had enough to sink a mid-sized company. But that wasn't the plan. Not yet. I hadn't heard from the company. No Slack, no email, not even a meeting cancellation. I checked LinkedIn. 2 directors were suddenly gone. Titles removed. Looking for new opportunities. One of them had approved a $2,000 dinner for a client who turned out to be his cousin. By Tuesday, the story was out. Not the whole thing. Just a piece. A small write-up on a business blog referencing internal whistleblower documents and systemic misuse of corporate funds. No company name mentioned, but anyone on the inside knew. The phrases were too specific. Sales execs started locking down their profiles. Someone deleted half their Twitter history. I saw Slack channels disappear in real time. Then the legal threat started. The company's counsel sent a cease and desist to the blog. It didn't work. Another outlet picked it up. Then another. All anonymous sources. All quoting internal documents provided independently. They had no idea how many people had access now. On Wednesday, I walked back into the office. My badge worked, but barely. The scanner blinked red twice before it let me through. People stared when I walked in. Some avoided my eyes. One of the marketing girls just nodded at me slowly, like she knew, but didn't want to get involved. I went straight to my desk in the storage room. It was empty. No scanner. No boxes. Just a chair and a note that said, "Please relocate to HR immediately." So I did. The HR woman was alone. No smiles this time. Just tired eyes and a stack of papers in front of her. She said they were doing a departmental restructure. Said my role had evolved beyond scope. Said they were offering me a package to move on peacefully. I asked if it included a formal statement clearing my name. She blinked. I said I wanted it in writing. I was not a security risk. I was not the source of data breaches. I had reported policy violations through proper internal channels, and I wanted that signed by someone who still worked there. She didn't argue, just nodded. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. The severance was bigger this time. 3 months' pay, full benefits, letters of reference, and a signed official statement from compliance. I took a picture of it. Then I signed. I left the building without saying goodbye. 3 weeks later, 5 people were gone. 2 quietly resigned. 1 was walked out with security. 1 VP was placed on leave, but never came back. Drew? He ended up consulting for a third-tier startup, scraping LinkedIn for warm leads. The company made a public statement. We take financial integrity seriously. But internally, they were gutted. Clients asked questions. Investors pulled out of a Q4 deal. The board brought in outside auditors. Training got stricter. Expenses required dual approval. They even hired a new head of compliance. They thought I wanted revenge. I didn't. I wanted the truth to hurt as much as being invisible did. I wanted them to feel watched the way I felt forgotten. I wanted them to know that even someone they shoved into a storage room could bring the whole damn floor down. And I did. I got another job 2 months later. Different company. Better culture. My new manager actually reads the documents I send him. When I ask questions, he listens. He asked me once in the interview, "What would your last coworkers say about you?" I said they didn't say much, but I think they're still talking now.